Hey, we're live. Welcome everybody to Steeven Orr Media Live, episode 2. This is the live stream thing that I have put together in order to get episodes recorded. So, yeah, I say we just get started. What do you say? What do you say? Tried to arrange stuff to make this a little more natural if you were in the last Steeven Orr Media Live. I don't know. Let's just get started, shall we? The following pod. The following podcast was recorded in front of a live streaming audience on Wednesday, June the 17th, 2026. This episode will also contain references to stories and characters that may cause sudden and uncontrollable feelings of nostalgic joy and wonder. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Another G.I. Joe podcast, and this is episode blah. You're listening to Another G.I. Joe podcast, and this is episode number 4, Operation Wingfield. Take a little drink here. Hello and welcome to another piece of poop. Let's try that again. Hello and welcome to another G.I. Joe podcast, the podcast that recently started rewatching the cartoon from the 80s and now kind of wants to talk about that. You know, maybe at some point. Anyway, I'm your host. My name is Steven, and I don't think I have ever talked about how I got into G.I. Joe or the comics specifically, which, I don't know, seems weird. Feels like it's something I would have brought up in the episode number 0, but I didn't. So I'll talk about it right now. So let's see. At some point after the launch of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 1 for Marvel Comics, which was in March of 1982. I'm going to do that again. So at some point after the launch of the comic, which was in March of 1982, but before September of 83, I had been seeing commercials for G.I. Joe on the TV. Now, these may have been commercials for the comic or commercials for the toys. I don't really remember. Now, these may have been commercials for the comic or commercials for the toys. I don't really remember. And honestly, it was probably both. All I can remember is that the commercials that I would see on TV had some really kick-ass animation sequences. And as the summer of 1983 was coming to a close, one of those commercials came on the TV while my mom was in the room with me. And I know this fact. Now, my memory is like Swiss cheese. It's got a lot of holes in it. But I know that at some point during the summer of 1983, I watched that commercial with my mom because I know that I told her as we were watching the cartoon, as we were watching the commercial, when I'll just say I was 11 years old, I told her that I loved the cartoon that was in the commercial and that I wished that they would make an entire cartoon show just like that. Well, a month or so later, our copy of the 1983 TV Guide Fall Preview issue arrived in the mail. And it was from that my life changed forever. One Saturday afternoon, on the afternoon of Saturday, September the 10th, 1983, I was out in the backyard. I'm playing, I'm running around, and I'm doing the kind of junk that an 11-year-old would do in small town Kansas. And suddenly my mom calls out to me through the kitchen window. She's in the kitchen. I'm in the backyard. She opens up the window. Steven, come on in. I have something to show you. Steven, my favorite of my 3 sons, you special, special boy. Come on into the kitchen. I have something I want to show you. I don't remember if that's exactly what she said, but it was probably something like that. I'm a middle child. Anyway, she shows me the TV guide, and in the TV guide is an ad for G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, week-long cartoon miniseries. 5 episodes, 30 minutes per episode, plus commercials, of course. 5 episodes, 30 minutes per episode, which includes commercials. And it was starting just that Monday, September the 12th, 1983. Needless to say, I tuned in and I was hooked. It would be, however, another 7 months before I started reading the comics. I was watching the cartoon. I was getting the toys, or my parents were getting the toys for me. So I was playing with the toys and watching the cartoon. But the comic book portion of it didn't come in till later. My dad at the time was a letter carrier in Lawrence, Kansas. And in April of 1984, he took me, along with my older brother and my younger brother, to this little shop he discovered just that week while he was covering another carrier's route in downtown Lawrence. It was a shop called Quality Comics, and it was there that I picked out my first ever comic book, and it was G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 25. Number 25. I started getting the book monthly at that point because my parents, or my older brother, who was into comics, convinced them to give each of us 2 subscriptions, or a subscription to 2 Marvel comics each. And I chose G.I. Joe and Captain America. But yeah, that's how I got into G.I. Joe. How about you? Email me, GIJoe@SoManyPodcasts.com. That's G.I. Joe without any punctuation or spaces. Email me, and hey, maybe I'll read it out in a future episode. Anyway, today we're looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 4. This issue sports a cover date of October 1982, though it hit the shelves in July. It sold for just 60 cents, and it is entitled Operation Wingfield. Larry Hama is credited for providing the script, while Herb Trimpe handled the plotting and the piddles. Piddles? He handled the piddles. He piddled all over the place. Larry Hama is credited. Good God almighty. Larry Hama is credited for providing the script, while Herb Trimpe handled the plotting and the pencils. John DiAgostino and Jack Abel did the inks. The letters were by Diana Albers, and the colorist was George Roussos. The Joes are alerted to the existence of an extreme paramilitary militia group in Montana. I really should read through the synopsis a couple times before I start recording. The Joes are alerted to the existence of an extreme paramilitary militia group in Montana led by a mustachioed fellow by the name of Commander Wingfield. The group may have ties to Cobra, and so the Joes decide to take a look. The group may have ties to Cobra, and so the Joes decide to take a look. Hawk and Grunt go undercover as recruits, while Snake Eyes conduct super sneaky ninja reconnaissance. Snake Eyes discovered that the Snake Eyes discovers that the group has a B-29 Super Fortress bomber capable of nuclear deployment. He spies on Wingfield and his officers having a meeting, and they plan to use the bomber to drop a nuclear warhead on Vladivostok, which they hope will lead to World War III. They have a second warhead buried beneath the camp that they can detonate as a backup. Let me just fix a couple things here. They also have a second warhead that's buried under the camp that they can detonate as a backup plan in case the bombing of Vladivostok fails. That they can detonate as a backup plan in case the bombing of Vladivostok fails. Vladivostok. Why? I feel like I'm saying that weird. They also have a second warhead that's buried beneath the camp that they can detonate as a backup plan in case the bombing of Vladivostok fails. I still think I'm saying that weird. Meanwhile, Hawk and Grunt investigate a warehouse and discover that Wingfield has T-60E tanks, likely provided to them by Cobra. They trigger an alarm and are overpowered by Wingfield's men. Wingfield at that point is forced to hasten his plan, and his right-hand man Carruthers suits up for flight. Snake Eyes radios for reinforcements, and they see the B-29 fly off. Hawk commandeers a jet fighter to go after it, but the radio doesn't work. And so, left with no other choice, he shoots down the bomber and it crashes into the ocean. Grunt and Snake Eyes are about to engage Wingfield until they learn that he intends to use the families of his recruits as armed human shields. Wingfield's wife, Sherry, shoots him in the back just as he's about to shoot her recruits. Wingfield's wife, Sherry, shoots him in the back just as he's about to shoot a recruit's wife. Sherry informs the Joes that her husband, Commander Wingfield, has activated a 10-minute timer on the nuclear warhead that's buried beneath him. And has activated a 10-minute timer on the nuclear warhead that's buried beneath them. And as the issue ends, Zap and Grunt work together to deactivate the bomb. All right, so before we dive into the meat of the issue, I would like to talk about the three Joes who are assigned to this mission: Hawk, Grunt, and Snake Eyes. So this is a segment that I want to try to do going forward. And it's just, we're going to look at the file cards for each of these Joes. And I want to try to just focus on whoever the main Joes were for that issue. And if we have an issue where just every freaking Joe is involved, then I don't know, we may skip it that episode, we may not. But I'm going to call this segment Roll Call. And if you're watching the video, the file card that you can see there was provided. The file cards that you can see there were, well, I got them from 3djoes.com. All right, so we will start with Hawk. They have him listed on the original file card from 1982 as Missile Commander, codename Hawk. First name, Clayton M. Abernathy, and we have his serial number. His paramilitary specialty is artillery, and his secondary military specialty is radar. He was born in Denver, Colorado, and they have a grade here of 0-6. I have no idea what that means. If you know what that means, email me, gijoe@somanypodcasts.com. The bio here, the bio for Hawk says, Hawk comes from a well-established, really loaded family. Hawk comes from a well-established, real loaded family. He's a West Point graduate, top of class, and has seen action in a number of trouble spots. He graduated from advanced infantry training, covert op. He graduated from advanced I can't speak. graduated from advanced infantry training at the Covert Ops School. He served on Cadre, North Atlantic Range Command, and USA ENG COM EVR missile and radar training, which is classified, which is probably good because I have no idea what any of that means. He's also a qualified expert. He's also a qualified expert with an M16, the M19 11A1. He's also a good frickety frick flack flip. He's also a qualified expert. I keep saying expert, like Frankfurt. He's also a qualified expert on the M16 and the M1911A1 auto pistol. I don't know if I'm saying that one right. I'm not really all that knowledgeable on weapons and their designations and all that junk. But the final bit on the file card here is a quote. I don't know who the quote is from, but it says, "He is keenly intelligent and perceptive and quite capable of totally selfless acts. He is keenly intelligent and perceptive and quite capable of totally selfless acts in support of his teammates. An excellent leader." Next, we got Grunt, who is an infantry trooper. His real name is Robert W. Graves. His real name is Robert W. Graves. His primary military specialty is infantry, while his secondary military specialty is small arms armorer and artillery coordinator. He was born in Columbus, Ohio, and he is a E4 grade soldier. He is familiar with all NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms as well as domestic civilian arms. He graduated advanced infantry training and finished in the top 10 class. Jesus, flip. I don't know what's going on. And he finished in the top 10 of his class. He's a qualified expert on the M14, the M16, and the M1911A1 auto pistol. His quote states, "Grunt is a highly motivated, systematic individual. He's a stand-up guy who doesn't blow his cool in a firefight." And then finally, we have Snake Eyes, who is a commando. His real name is classified. His primary military specialty is classified. His primary military specialty is infantry. His secondary military specialty is hand-to-hand. His secondary military specialty is hand-to-hand combat instructor. His birthplace is classified, and he is a grade E5. Snake Eyes is proficient in 12 different unarmed fighting systems, karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, and is highly skilled in the use of edged weapons. He's received extensive training in mountaineering, underwater demolitions, jungle, desert, and Arctic survival, and some form of holistic medicine. He's a qualified expert with all NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms. And he's a qualified expert with all NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms. His quote, "The man is a total mystery, but he's real good at his job. Heck, he's the best." And that, folks, was roll call. So grab up your issues of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 4, because we're about to dive. Boop, 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 boop. Just get some things here ready. All right, we will start, as always, with the cover. This cover was penciled by Bob Hall with inks by Al Milgram, and it is not one of my favorites. I really am not a big fan of the way Hawk is portrayed on the cover. Doesn't really look like Hawk. He's got a beret on, which I don't think I've ever seen Hawk wear a beret. Snake eyes, the goggles over his eyes, the eyepieces are kind of slanted in a weird Spider-Man way. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of it. It reminds me, if this was the 90s, it reminds me a lot of your average Rob Liefeld cover, because he did a lot of covers where you'd have the characters standing either posing or charging at you, and what they were standing on would be some kind of rounded bit of ground, whether it be metal or earth or stone or plastic or whatever. But that's what it kind of reminds me of. This is actually probably put together a bit better than a lot of those 90s Rob Liefeld covers. I don't want to take anything away from Liefeld, but yeah. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of the cover. It's mainly because of Hawk. If you look at Hawk on the inside, when we get into the issue, his face, his head is longer. It's a bit more squat here on the cover. I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know why. Getting into the issue here in just a second. Getting into the issue, we have our first page, which is a splash page, and we are greeted with a close-up of Commander Wingfield. He's holding an M16. He's got a hat on with the logo of their militia unit there on the hat. They're called Strike First. And he's got what I'm going to guess that they're aviator sunglasses. And then he's got a curly Q handlebar mustache. He looks a bit silly, if you ask me. But on this opening page, he's yelling at his recruits. Listen up, troops. This is your weapon. Nomenclature Mike 16. M16. You will learn to love it. But first, you will learn to respect it. Turn the page, and basically the camera has backed up. So now we see that Wingfield is addressing some recruits, and he commands them to run what would we call that? A training maneuver, which really just involves them running across the line of targets on their gun range. So Wingfield and his second-hand guy, Carruthers. So Wingfield and his right-hand man, Carruthers, and his wife, Sherry, they're standing back where you would stand if you were firing down the range for target practice. And so he's got all these recruits running perpendicular to the targets, and Wingfield starts to open fire on him. He's firing down by their feet. And Sherry and Carruthers, they're not too happy with the way that Wingfield has planned training that day. I don't know about this, Vance. Sherry and Carruthers, they're not all that happy with with this little scheme of the Commander Vance Wingfield. That's his full name. I don't know about this, Vance. These recruits are too green. They've only been in training here for a week. Your wife's right, Commander. Your wife's right, Commander Wingfield. Using live ammo at this stage is too dangerous. You're out of line, Carruthers. And Sherry, when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. I'm not here to wet nurse a gaggle of panty wastes. And that's when he opens fire. During the exercise, he actually tags one. He shoots a guy in the back of his calf, basically. And the guy goes down, and Carruthers and Sherry run over to him to check and see if he's okay. And Carruthers announces that it looks like the bullet hit him square in the bone and shattered it, and that the guy needs a hospital. Old curly Q mustache Vance Wingfield, on the other hand, he has no sympathy at all for this guy. I think the bone is shattered. He needs hospital treatment. No, he knew the risks when we joined us. He'll have to make do with the field dressing and some aspirin. So, yeah. Nice guy. Nice guy. He wants his men tough. He wants them hard. He wants them ready for battle. Turn the page 3, and we learn that what we're actually watching is a film, and we're watching it along with the Joes. Hawk steps up in front of the screen and tells them to shut it down, turn on the lights so he can address them. And he explains to them that what they just watched was footage acquired by the FBI during like a routine surveillance operation, I guess. Seems kind of weird for just them to go into a militia group undercover, take video, and then call it just a routine surveillance. Seems like that's less routine than something specific that they did. I don't know. Maybe I'm I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but seems a little more than routine. Anyway, Hawk explains to the Joe team. Suddenly I feel like I can't remember if I originally called him Hawk here at the beginning when I talked about him stepping in front of the screen. This is just for us on the video. I can't remember if I called him Hawk or if I called him Flag. So now I'm just going to do this page over. So we turn the page and we find out that what we are watching is actually some footage, video footage that is being projected on a screen, and we are watching it along with the Joes, because suddenly Hawk stands up in front of the screen. He tells them to shut it down and turn the lights on. He's going to address the Joes. He explains to the Joes that what they just watched was video footage taken by the FBI during surveillance exercise, during a surveillance mission of some sort. And the belief, well, General Flag and the brass at the Pentagon, as Hawk calls them, they think that this militia group and Commander Wingfield are being secretly funded by international terrorists, possibly Cobra. And because of that, the Joes have to get involved. So they're going to send in 3 men. 2 of them will go undercover as recruits. And then the third will just do reconnaissance. They'll hide in the perimeter, watch through the binoculars, make notes, that kind of stuff. Stalker asks Hawk who's going to be the decoy. Basically, who's going to be the 2 Joes that are going to go undercover. And Grunt is sitting next to him. Grunt says to him, "That's your specialty, Ranger. Besides, you enjoy camping out in the woods with furry animals." And that's when Hawk announces that Snake Eyes will be doing the reconnaissance, and the 2 men who are going in undercover will be himself, Hawk, and then Grunt. To which Stalker responds, "Have fun with them furry animals, Grunt." And then Grunt just simply responds with, "Nuts." I actually find this little scene here kind of interesting, because Grunt is joking that because Stalker is a Ranger, he would be the one who would go undercover. That's what he does. But I kind of have a feeling that this militia group, Strike First, has no people of color within their ranks at all. and Stalker trying to join probably isn't going to get very far. So it makes sense that they wouldn't use Stalker. And they don't say it out loud, but if you read between the lines, I think that's what they were kind of going for there. I, of course, never would have caught that had I been reading this as a small child when this came out. What did I say? 82. I'd have been 10. So, yeah. Turn the page. Page 4. We are now at the camp. Hawk and Grunt have just gotten off the bus with the other recruits. And Grunt is kind of unhappy. He tells Hawk, he's already been through basic training. He doesn't want to do it again, but they got to do what they got to do because they're Joes, right? They got to save the free world. That's what they're supposed to do. There's a couple of soldiers from Strike First helping everybody, telling them as they get off the bus where they're supposed to go. Commander Wingfield will address the new recruits at 1500 hours on the button, is what one guy tells him. Grunt points out that as they're getting off the bus, or as others are getting off the bus, he points out that some of the new recruits brought their wives and kids with them. And Hawk explains that Wingfield encourages that because, as he puts it, when you have power over a man's family, you have power over the man. So at 1500 hours, the new recruits line up. Commander Wingfield addresses them. He refers to them as fellow survivors. Fellow survivors, you have taken the first important step towards ensuring the continued existence of your families. I congratulate you. That's how he starts his speech. You may have felt that this first step, the relocation and the cutting of old ties, was difficult. Well, I assure you, the second step, your training, will be far more difficult. It must be to fully prepare you for that most horrible third step, the grim reality of survival after the total collapse of civilization. So he's basically using they're basically posing as preppers, right? He acts as if he is forming this military unit in case, or because there will be a total collapse of civilization as we know it. There will be some sort of apocalyptic event, and they will need to be prepared for that. And one of the things that they need to do to prepare is to become knowledgeable on weapons and tactics to defend their families and, frankly, defend the good old USA when the shit hits the fan. Grunt points out a big building off in the distance that has ventilators on the roof. Hawk's like, yeah, I see it. That must be the ammo dump. Hawk acknowledges the existence of this building, explaining that it's probably an ammo dump or an armory, that the big fans at the top are used to vent. Hawk says, that must be the ammo dump or armory. Big fans like that are used to vent off fumes from high explosives. Go to page 5. 2300 hours. That's 11 p.m. Grunt and Hawk are in the barracks. They're in their beds. And they're talking shop. The entire camp is enclosed by hurricane fencing. they're basically just going over their observations from the day and pointing out various defensive and offensive bits about the camp. Grunt had paced off the intervals between the floodlights. And so they have decided that tomorrow night they'll do a little recon. Next day, 0600 hours, 6 a.m., and they are going through training. They're climbing walls. They're crawling through tunnels, culverts, big pipes. They're swinging across bodies of water. They're fighting with sticks. And at one point, as they're fighting with their sticks, learning combat, defense, and offense, Hawk and Grunt have a little whispered conversation. Hawk says, "Take it easy, Grunt. We don't want to look too good at this." To which Grunt replies, "Sorry, Hawk. I'll try to do worse." Which is kind of funny. Next page, page 6. The men are out for a run. There's a guy standing on a platform yelling at him, "Keep up the pace. 5 more laps around the perimeter wire before breakfast." So they've been doing all this. They haven't even had breakfast yet. They've been climbing walls, crawling through pipes, fighting with sticks, and now running at least 5 laps, more than 5 laps, because they have 5 more left, around the perimeter wire. Haven't even had breakfast yet. Hawk and Grunt, of course, are leading the pack. "We'll check out the armory at 2300 hours tonight. Whew, these other guys are really out of shape," says Hawk. "Yeah, we're holding back as much as we can without being obvious. And we're still leading the pack," says Grunt. Meanwhile, Snake Eyes is in a tree outside the perimeter, and he's watching all this through a pair of binoculars, and he's making some notes. On this page, it's kind of nice since Snake Eyes doesn't talk. This is our way to understand what he's thinking, because he's basically journaling it in a field book as he's doing reconnaissance. Snake Eyes Recon Report 06. Snake Eyes Recon Report 0645 hours. Observed Hawk and Grunt pretending to be clumsy. Observed Hawk and Grunt pretending to be clumsy and slow in a most unconvincing manner. Perimeter too well guarded for daylight. Perimeter too well guarded for daylight penetration. Weakest link in defense is portion of fence directly below flood lamp masts. 4 aircraft on landing strip. 4 aircraft on landing strip. These F-86 Sabre jet fighters, 3 F-86 Sabre jet fighters, and 1 fighter apparently undergoing radio repairs. 1 B-29 Super Fortress heavy bomber. Primitive, but is well within nuclear delivery capability. Must infiltrate and confirm nuclear capability. Will penetrate tonight at, turn the page, and now we're seeing Snake Eyes sneaking into the camp. So we are now moved forward in time, but we're still reading the journal entries. So he's breaking into the camp at 22:30 hours, 10:30 p.m. Route of entry will be at weakest point. Will coordinate wire cutting with highest levels of nocturnal insect. noise. And as we're reading that, He is using wire clippers to cut through the wire fence. Must memorize location of entryway to facilitate withdrawal. Will count fence posts between lights. Which is interesting, I guess. I don't know if this much detail needs to go in these notes. I don't. Part of me feels like he's including too much detail. And I know that's for our benefit as the reader. This is a different way for the writer to explain what's going on. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. Anyway, this is so we, as the reader, understands how he's doing this, I guess. To me, it feels like Snake Eyes is obviously on the spectrum because he has to note in his notes that he will need to remember to memorize the location of where he came through the fence, and that he will count fence posts between the lights. It just seems kind of, I don't know, obsessive compulsive a bit to write all that down. I know that I make lists of stuff that I need to do. And sometimes by the time I get down to make my list of whatever I need to do for that day, I may have done 2 or 3 items already. And yet I still put them on the list just so I can cross them out. That's what this feels like to me. So we get 2 more panels on this page of Snake Eyes infiltrating the camp. Main objective, location of nuclear device or devices, if any. Unless circumstances yield more profitable intelligence. So as Snake Eyes is creeping about, he comes across a couple of soldiers who are on their way to a meeting. Wingfield, as they're talking out loud, these 2 soldiers, we learn that Wingfield is called a meeting. They don't know why it's being called so late at night, but it must be important because only the top levels, the top guys, have been invited. Meanwhile, the last 2 panels on this page, we're on page 7 still. It's now 2300 hours because that's when Grunt and Hawk said they were going to sneak out and reconnoiter, check out the place. Basically, they're going to go check out the big building that they think might be an armory. And this is what we see them doing here in the last 2 panels on page 7. Go to page 8. We get 2 panels showing Grunt and Hawk standing outside, hiding, basically. They're behind some barrels, watching the entrance to the big building with the fans on the top that they're going to go investigate. Meanwhile, Snake Eyes has climbed to the top of this other structure so that he can sneak into the attic. Basically, he removes this bit from the roof so he can sneak into this crawl space between the ceiling and the top of the roof. And that way he can spy on the meeting. And we turn the page to page 9, and we learn that the whole idea behind what Commander Wingfield has I'm at a loss. I'm trying to figure out how I wanted to say that. Okay, I'm just going to sit here and think for a minute, guys. This whole idea that Strike First was put together to prepare themselves for an inevitable collapse of civilization. This is where we learn that that's a bit of a pose. While that is true, they are not, or at least Wingfield is not satisfied with waiting for the collapse of civilization. He is ready to bring it about himself. He explains that Cobra had given them 2 nuclear warheads. He also explains in a bit of, I'm sorry, Larry, a bit of, I think, clunky expositional dialogue here. He says that the technicians from Cobra who installed the silent alarm systems that guard our armory have also provided us with 2 nuclear warheads. So I don't think there was any real reason for him to include the bit that Cobra installed their silent alarm system in the armory. I think everybody at that meeting already knows that. Maybe it's just kind of, hey, remember those guys from Cobra? They installed the thing. Remember them? Yeah, well, they gave us 2 nuclear warheads. Really, that's there as a bit of foreshadowing, because we know, as a reader, just before this, we know that Hawk and Grunt are going to break into that armory. And now we learn that there's a silent alarm system hidden in the armory. So we're, as a reader, we go, oh no, what's going to happen to Hawk and Grunt? We don't learn right away, though. We don't learn any of that. The fate of Hawk and Grunt on this page at all. Instead, we learn Commander Wingfield's ultimate plan. So they have this big B-29 Super Fortress bomber, and they're going to load one of the nuclear warheads on it, and they're going to fly to Vladivostok. It's the closest Soviet city that's within range of where that bomber can fly. So they're going to fly there. They're going to drop the bomb, blow up the city. And that will, of course, make the Soviets think that the Americans launched a nuclear warhead, a nuclear strike against the Soviet Union. So they'll launch all their warheads at America. America will see that happen, launch all their warheads at the Soviets, and boom, World War III begins. And Strike Force and Strike First will be there to reclaim civilization for God and the white men, basically. For God and white men. I'm shaking my head. If you can't see that, if you're not watching the video, I'm shaking my head in disdain. He also explains, because he did tell us that they gave them 2, Cobra gave them 2 nuclear warheads. He explains that if something goes wrong with the bombing of Vladivostok, they have buried the 2nd warhead beneath their camp. And it's rigged up to a remote trigger that only Commander Wingfield can use. He's the only one that knows how to set it. He's the only one that knows how to disarm it. And so if the bombing mission fails, he's going to start that timer. The bomb is going to explode. It'll kill all of them, because, well, Wingfield at that point, he feels like if the bombing mission fails, then that means something has gone so wrong that the government knows that Strike First was involved, and so they're going to come and arrest him. So by blowing up the nuclear warhead beneath the camp, that too will also start World War III, because the Americans will think that the Soviets bombed Montana, and then the whole thing starts again. And it's okay at that point. It's obvious that they would prefer for the bombing mission that they want that to go swimmingly. That's plan A. Plan B is, all right, at that point, if we've got to do plan B is, all right, at that point, if we have to do plan B, at that point, we're all going to get locked up, and I'm not going to get locked away. So I'll want to die at that point anyway. So it's okay if we all blow up, and the main goal will still go forward, and we just won't be there to clean up the mess. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Go to page 10. Hawk and Grunt are breaking into the armory. We see them trigger the silent alarm, which is basically just a wire that's running across the floor that one of them steps on. Seems kind of stupid for for an alarm system that you hope somebody will step on this wire. I mean, if it's dark, you're not going to see it. I get that. They didn't see it. It's dark. But there's also the chance that they could just step over it just from their natural walking gait. Right? I don't know. Seems kind of silly. Maybe they didn't have the laser eyes like they do nowadays. I don't know. But they step on the wire. It alerts Wingfield that somebody is in the armory. And so he sends everybody in the meeting, he sends them to the armory. What's funny here is we get the fifth panel on this page, on page 10. It's a silent alarm. We've said that already. And the way they know that the alarm has gone off is that there is a panel on the wall in the back of the room, or actually the front of the room. But it's, so Wingfield would be up on a stage basically in the back of the room, looking toward the front of the room. And there on the wall is this panel with two lights. Each light is labeled. One says armory and one says airfield. And the light for the armory has now started shining. And that's how they know that the alarm has gone off. So they only have two silent alarms in the entire camp, the armory and the airfield. Makes sense. Got to protect their weapons, and the airfield is where the bomber is, and they got to protect their bomber. Page 11. Wingfield is now standing outside, and he's calling for all the soldiers. Surround the armory. Secure all exits and windows. First platoon, in through the front door. And remember, I want prisoners in condition to answer questions. And so the soldiers rush into the armory. Hawk and Grunt fight back as best they can. And Grunt, I'm telling you what, he ate his Wheaties that morning or that night before they left on their mission. I don't know what Grunt did, but at one point, he picks a guy up over his head, Conan style, and tosses the guy into the other soldiers, knocks him down. And that's like the last two panels on this page. And for some reason, when I'm looking at the last panel and I'm seeing him throwing this guy, and the guy has barreled into the group of soldiers and they're all being knocked down to the ground, and they put a special effects or sound effect word on here that says slam. But I hear the sounds of pins being knocked down by a bowling ball. Page 12, Hawk and Grunt are overcome just by the sheer numbers of these soldiers that are dogpiling them and beating them. We've seen this scene in, heck, I think it happened in The Mass Device, the first G.I. Joe cartoon miniseries, when Cobra captures Duke. It might even be the second one where they capture Duke and Snake Eyes. They all pile on him and they just start beating him. That's weird to see in a cartoon, but we're seeing it here. So they capture Grunt and Hawk. Wingfield decides there's really no reason to interrogate them because the way they fought obviously means that they are some tough hombres, tough some bitches, that whoever sent them, FBI, CIA, whoever, military, sent some of their best men who are not going to crack under interrogation. So there's no point. Instead, they need to move forward with their plan, and it needs to happen that night. And so he tells Carruthers to suit up. In the meantime, the last 3 panels on this page, Snake Eyes is sneaking into their communication shed. There's a guy sitting at the controls with the mic. Snake Eyes comes up from behind him, grabs him by the head, knocks him out, I guess. And then he starts using the telegraph. It's a good thing they had a telegraph. I don't know if maybe the telegraph was a standard piece of equipment in radio equipment back in 1982. You got the microphone, and then you got the thing to tap out Morse code. Luckily, they had it, since Snake Eyes can't talk or chooses not to talk. We still don't know at this point, but he sends out a message with the doots. Page 13. Skip some ads. Well, no, page 13. We're at G.I. Joe headquarters. Breaker is manning the radio, and he gets the incoming message from Snake Eyes, to which he says out loud, "Things must be pretty bad there if you're..." And he responds out loud, "G.I. Joe Command Center reading you loud and clear, Snake Eyes. Things must be pretty bad there if you're the one that's calling for help." Ha ha ha! Get it? Because Snake Eyes doesn't talk. Ha ha! Anyway, Dawn arrives in Montana, and Grunt and Hawk are being marched to a pit. Soldiers take him to the edge of the pit. They call it a hole. They tell him to climb on in. Before Hawk and Grunt can do so, however, Snake Eyes drops on top of the other 2 soldiers. Snake Eyes, who was hiding up in a tree, drops on top of the other 2 soldiers, knocking them out. And that's when the 3 of them, as they're comparing notes, they see the big bomber taking off. Of course, Hawk and Grunt now understand what's going on with the bomber, because Snake Eyes explained to them, probably showed him his notes, maybe, I don't know. Hawk was probably looking through his notes and saying, "Why did you have to write down that you need to memorize where you were going through the fence? Why did you write down that you'd have to count the fence posts? Were you just going to forget? When you got on site and you cut into the fence, did you stop for a second and look at your notes and go, okay, what do I do next? Oh yeah, I have to memorize where this is. How do I do that? Let me look at my notes. Oh yeah, I have to count the fence posts. Why would you do that, Snake Eyes?" I don't know if Hawk did that, but regardless, Hawk and Grunt, they understand just as much as Snake Eyes at this point what's going on with the bomber. Page 14. Hawk tells Grunt and Snake Eyes that he's going to head to the airfield to see what he can do about the bomber. And he tells Grunt and Snake Eyes to head to the armory, keep an eye on Wingfield. As Grunt and Snake Eyes approach the armory, they're fired upon. Grunt has to hide behind a rock, basically, as he's being fired upon. As bullets are raining down on him, spinging, spew, sping, off of the rocks around him. Snake Eyes, in the meantime, has crawled to the roof of the building. He's gonna go in and put a stop to it, apparently. But turn the page to page 15. When he gets up on the roof, Snake Eyes leans out over the edge of the roof to look in a window, and he sees that the armory, it's not just soldiers, it's the families of the soldiers as well. So he alerts Grunt by popping off a couple of shots. Basically, if we didn't talk about it on the last page, but Grunt tells him, give me 2 quick shots. Give me 2 quick signal shots and I'll lay down cover fire for you. Yeah. Basically, hey, Sleepy Reader has joined us. Hello, Sleepy Reader 666. Thank you for joining us. Right in the thick of battle as you join us. Anyway, Snake Eyes and Grunt, they're going to the armory. They're under some cover. They're looking at the armory. They feel that it's a little too quiet. They don't know what's going on there. Snake Eyes is going to go in and take a look, and Grunt tells him, give me 2 quick signal shots and I'll lay down cover fire for your withdrawal. 3 shots will be the signal, hold fire. And he's saying this as he's just stepping out into the open. And that's when the people inside the armory start firing on him. He hides behind a big rock, waiting as Snake Eyes is climbing the roof of the building. And as he's laying there, hidden behind this rock, and they're just freaking laying down all kinds of fire on him. Bullets are sping, spang, sping off the rock. And he's saying out loud, hurry up, Snake Eyes. This rock's not going to last much longer. Not with this pounding. Go to page 15. Snake Eyes is on the roof. He's leaning out over the top of the roof, and he's looking through a window, and he can see into the armory, and he can see that it's not just soldiers in the armory. There are the wives and the kids of the recruits and the soldiers as well. And so he pops off 3 quick shots, which is the code, the signal to Grunt, tell him to hold his fire. In the meantime, at the airfield, Hawk manages to steal one of the jets. It just so happens to be the one of the 3 jets that well, as they put it in the book, someone starting up the jet that was redlined for radio repairs. So Hawk's going after the bomber in a jet with no radio. Page 16. We learn why that's a problem, because Hawk is trying to radio the bomber to explain to them, hey, buddy, we know what you're doing. Don't do it, or I'm going to shoot you down and kill you. But he can't. He can't give him a warning because the radio doesn't work. So at the bottom of this page, page 16, Snake Eyes has come back and is met back up with Grunt behind the rocks. And Grunt says, Snake Eyes, you made it back. I'm sort of glad that nuclear warhead is on a fast plane traveling away from me and not sitting in Montana with us. And uh-oh, I don't like that look you just flashed me. What does it mean? First of all, I have to try to imagine how Snake Eyes would flash a look at Grunt, because he's got a mask on. You can't see his face. So did he just like quickly turn so fast to look at him and then just start shaking his head? I don't know. I don't know what he did. Something obviously to alert Grunt to the fact that what Grunt's talking about may not be right, which means that Snake Eyes, when they were comparing notes, Snake Eyes never explained to them, to Grunt and Hawk, he never told them about the second nuclear warhead that's in the ground beneath him. Sleepy Reader on YouTube asks, I'm guessing we're looking at Herb Trimpe. Looks like good, clear visual storytelling. You are correct, sir. Not only did he pencil this issue, he plotted it as well. Or he scripted it. No, he plotted it. Larry scripted it. Turn the page, page 17. Hawk, at this point, he really doesn't have any other choice. He can't warn Carruthers to turn back, so he shoots him down, and Carruthers and the plane go down in the ocean. Hawk is watching as the plane goes down, and he's saying, jump, Carruthers, jump. But by the end of the page, the plane's underwater. We never see Carruthers. We have to assume he's dead. Page 18. Commander Wingfield is holding one of those giant walkie-talkies that's 4 times the size of what a walkie-talkie would be nowadays. And his transmission, the line he had going with Carruthers, just went dead. He knows that means that Carruthers must have been shot down, so they have to go with plan B. On his big, giant brick, it's actually bigger than a brick, his walkie-talkie, he also has the controls to start the timer on the bomb that's buried beneath him, and so he does just that. One of the wives of the soldiers comes up to Wingfield at that point. She's got her son with her, who looks like he's probably 10, 12 years old. And she's crying, tears are streaming down her face. She tells Wingfield that he's crazy. What he's doing is crazy. Everything about him is crazy, especially that mustache. And she's taking her kid and she's leaving. Carruthers pulls a gun on her. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Wingfield pulls a gun on her. Carruthers doesn't do that. He's dead. He's pulling up a bed in Davy Jones' locker right now. But Wingfield pulls his gun on her, and she's walking away with her son, so he's about to shoot her in the back. No, he says. I'll brook no desertions. I'll brook no desertions of our I'll brook no desertions at our greatest hour. And then he tells her, you're undermining the integrity of our final gesture. 10 minutes from now, nothing will matter anymore. I have no reason not to shoot you. So he's getting ready to plug this woman. He's getting ready to kill her and her son. He doesn't think it's any big deal because they're all going to be dead in 10 minutes anyway when the bomb explodes. So he's as the page ends, he's holding the gun. It looks like he's shaking, and he commands his wife, Sherry, to back him up. And in that final panel there on page 18, she's starting to pull her gun from the holster that's on her chest. We turn the page and we have 6 panels. We have 3 rows of panels, 6 long, tall panels in the first row, and they alternate between Sherry slowly drawing her gun and a helicopter with the other Joes landing in the camp. And then it culminates in panel number 7, one wide panel in the middle row of panels. And we see that Sherry has drawn her gun and she shoots her husband in the back. It's at that time, final panel on the page 19, that the Joes burst into the armory or wherever this is that they're hiding, that all the people are holed up in. And they literally, I don't know what they use to break down the door, but whatever they use, it says crash as the door is just torn into pieces. And Stalker's yelling, "Everyone freeze! Everyone freeze! Drop your weapons and assume the position now." Go to page 20. Hawk has now arrived. And Sherry tells him about the bomb beneath him. She knows where it's located. She knows how to get it. She just doesn't know how to deactivate it. And so she directs them to where the bomb is. They pull it up out of this pit, basically, and they see that there's 5 minutes left. And so Hawk tells Zap, who is with the Joes that arrived, that it's up to him now. He needs to shut it down. Page 21, Zap is checking out the warhead. He's got like a stethoscope and he's listening to various places. And he tells us what kind of bomb this is and explains kind of how they're going to deactivate it. This is a standard Type 7 warhead with a simple spoken hub detonator. Give me a hand with the nose cover, Snake Eyes. So they take the top of the bomb off. The hub contains U-235 and is held in position by 4 spring-loaded spokes. If it drops, we get critical mass and 1 mucho big bang. And we can see now inside the bomb, there is like a gold ball with 4 spokes coming off of it. Grunt, it's your job to hold on to that hub and keep it from dropping. Grunt, it's your job to hold on to that hub and keep it from dropping. Say it again. Grunt, it's your job to hold on to that. Grunt, it's your job to hold on to that hub and keep it from dropping while I torch through the spokes. You got that, amigo? So basically, Grunt has to hold on to this gold ball. And Zap is going to cut those 4 spokes away from it, which would cause the ball to drop. And that would cause the bomb to explode. But if Grunt can hold it steady, then they can lift the ball out and bang, bomb is diffused. Apparently, the hub, the big ball, is extremely heavy. And as Grunt's really struggling with holding it up, his hands are getting sweaty, the thing's getting slippery. But as we turn to page 22, they are successful. They cut through the spokes. Grunt is able to lift the hub out of the bomb, and they're all saved. This page is also separated into 3 rows of panels. The middle row is just one long wide panel, and it tells us that we are now later in the story. Hawk is telling Grunt that they did a great job defusing that bomb, that the tech boys from Aberdeen checked out the warhead. They told me that its shielding was intact. You don't have to worry about decontamination or radiation poisoning. Furthermore, he explains, the techs also told me that the timer on the detonator was running fast. It only had 3 seconds left. It only had 3 seconds left to go when you lifted it clear. Whoa! We didn't see that, which seems silly, I guess. Anytime you watch a TV show or a movie and they're defusing a bomb, we always get to see the countdown. So we can see that it gets to 1 second. And then they shut it off. But the best part of this entire issue is the last panel. As Grunt and Hawk are talking, a couple of guys in a pickup truck drive by. And Grunt says, "Sheesh, I'll bet these locals are sure glad we're on the job." Last panel, we're basically looking through the windshield at the two guys in the truck. And they have themselves a quick little conversation as the issue ends. "Well, Clem, looks like they moving. Well, Clem, looks like they moving in some real soldier boys up to the old Wingfield place. Yep, liquor prices are going to go up, and the sheriff will be, yep, liquor prices are going to go up, and the sheriff will be setting his speed trap again. Best be keeping a close eye on your women folk, too. When I edit this, if I may put some banjo music right after that, because that needs some banjo music. The camp, by the way, I don't know if I explained this, the camp was called Camp Victory. Ha ha! The only victory had at that camp was by the good old USA. Anyway, that's the end of the issue. I really quite liked this story. Of the 4 issues that we've looked at so far, only 2 have had Cobra in the issue 1 and issue 3. Issue 2, no Cobra whatsoever. This issue, though, issue 4, is kind of Cobra adjacent because the weapons and the bombs that these militia guys were using came from Cobra. So Cobra was helping them. We never see Cobra. We don't see any Cobra soldiers. We can assume that there are a couple there within the, within the recruits. I'm sure Cobra has a couple of guys there keeping an eye on things, maybe on the down low. But beyond just hearing the name Cobra, we don't get Cobra at all in this issue, which does seem kind of weird, knowing what we know about G.I. Joe. Once the cartoon starts, G.I. Joe is all about fighting Cobra. And they've only been fighting Cobra 50% of the time in the series so far. I really enjoy Herb Trimpe's art. It's not always the best on every panel, but as Sleepy Reader pointed out earlier, for those of us on the live stream, he guessed it was Herb Trimpe penciling because these pages look like it's full of clear visual storytelling, which, yeah, that's what you get from HT. Herb Trimpe. Herbie Trimpe. Trimpe Herb. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry, guys. The colors of the soldiers' uniforms, though, being kind of a deep violet, like a purple, that's kind of weird. The militiamen, that's, I'm sure that has something to do with the lack of available colors to use at this time when it came to coloring books, but still. And then, of course, the 2 rednecks in the truck at the end just cracked me up. That's my favorite part of the whole issue. But yeah, that's all I have to say about G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 4, Operation Wingfield. What about you? Got any questions? Anything you'd like to add? Email me at gijoe@somanypodcasts.com. And who knows, I may read it out in a future episode. Actually, we have a question from Sleepy Reader. Do you know if these early Joe stories are currently in print, in trades, or omnibuses? Yes, I do. In fact, well, it's way over there in the other room. Now that Image Comics, more specifically Robert Kirkman's Skybound imprint, they now control the license, and they have released these massive paperback collections that are like, I think 50 issues each. I think there might be 3, maybe 4. 4 volumes out at this point. Should also mention Sleepy Reader also added that Trimpy was. I should also mention Sleepy Reader also added here in the comments of the live stream, Trimpy was always reliable for a good story. That is true. But yeah, these are collected if you're willing to pay the money, because they're like 50, 60 bucks per collection or something. And then I think you can get, I think there are hardcover versions even, and I think you can buy boxed sets with all the volumes that are like you can get 2 different versions, like a red version, which is the Cobra themed version, and then a blue version, which is the G.I. Joe themed version. All I have is the first collection so far. But the nice thing about the collections, because they're so big, they didn't want to charge too much for them. So the paper is good old comic book newsprint. And so they're really fun to read because they feel like, even though they're awkward to hold in your lap because they're so big, the paper, I love it. It's like reading an old comic. But that, I'm gonna do the outro to this section again. But that, folks, is all I have to say about G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, @4, Operation Wingfield. What about you? Any questions? Anything you'd like to add? Email me at GIJoe at keep getting that wrong. Email me at GIJoe@SoManyPodcasts.com, and who knows, I may even read it out in a future episode. Alternatively, you can email Another G.I. Joe podcast @gmail.com. In our next episode, Cobra attempts to capture a G.I. Joe Mobat tank during an Armed Forces Day parade. Will they succeed? That's next time when we dive into G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, #5, Tanks for the Memories, published by Marvel Comics in August of 1982. The synopsis used in this episode comes from marvelfandom.com and contains edits and rewrites, and contains a few edits and a few rewrites by me. And finally, the views and opinions expressed within this episode are mine and mine alone. And finally, the views and opinions expressed within this episode are mine and mine alone, and do not reflect the official policy or position of Marvel Comics, Hasbro, or really any other individual group, or really any other. Swear to God, if I can't say it the first time, I'm definitely not going to get it the second time. or really any other individual group or corporation, except of course when they do, which, you know, I'm sure at that point would just be a coincidence. So until next time, folks, keep a sharp eye out for Cobra plots. And as always, be nice to each other. Bye. And that is the end of the recording of the episode. So I will save the file. And then I will close out the live episode. Another G.I. Joe podcast. 004. All right. So before I sign off, a couple things I wanted to mention real quick. Actually, no, I was going to show some stickers, but I'm updating the look on a couple stickers, so I'll wait till I get those. Otherwise, Ed and I should be live streaming. Ed and I should be live streaming this summer. Yes, it's amazing how much this. Okay, so the recording, by the way, is 1 hour and 22 minutes. I guarantee by the time I get it all edited down, 45 minutes at the most, the episode will be. It's one of those things that's like, do I want, I forgot to show this part, but do I want to show that much behind the curtain? But I don't care. I don't care. That's why you're getting both now. That's why Ed and I do it with Superman Super Show and the Comic Book Super Show. You get both. You get the unfiltered and then the filtered, the edited. Anyway, what's this Sunday? This Sunday is I can't see my thing here. This Sunday is the 21st. Ed and I are supposed to be getting together Sunday, the 21st, 10 a.m. Central to do the Superman Super Show. So look for that. And then, I'll just keep kind of peppering in Steeven Orr Media Live to continue to record episodes of Hither Came Conan and Another G.I. Joe podcast. I may try to do these a little more often just to get ahead with those episodes, but that's going to depend on how quickly I can put notes and junk together. But that's all I got, folks. I want to thank you for joining us. Sleepy Reader 666 sounds like the username of a soldier of Satan. I don't know. Sorry. But that's it. Thanks for joining us, folks. Sleepy, since you were here and you commented, I will thank you personally. Bye.